Welcome to Killer Psychologist. I'm Dana Anderson, a forensic psychologist and your host of the show. Killer Psychologist is for true crime fanatics and anyone intrigued with the dark side of psychology. All right, welcome to Killer Psychologist. I have Dawn McCarty with me today, a cybersecurity expert, which I am so excited to talk about her skill set, how she became a cybersecurity expert, and people that may be interested in going into that career field, what that entails. A lot of this podcast, we talk about different careers that students, if they're interested in, how to become a cybersecurity expert, why it's important, how it's helpful for society. We're also going to dig deep into Reesa Teesa, who is a viral sensation who took over social media, particularly TikTok. She did a 50-part series entitled Who the F Did I Marry?, which she talks about her ex-husband, Jerome, aka Legion McCoy, and how she got involved with him. And she states that he is not who he said he was. And so now we're seeing video clips of him coming out, and he's sharing a very different narrative. And the reason why this story will resonate with everyone is because we've all had someone we've encountered in our life and we said, who the F am I with? Or who am I dating? Or who did I marry? So we're going to talk about how we can avoid getting into situations, getting into relationships with someone too soon where you don't actually know who they are. But then later you find out they aren't quite who they represented themselves to be. So Dawn's an expert on this. And we can talk about catfishing, deepfake images, and how to identify these individuals and protect yourself from harmful people. So Dawn sent me a video this morning of Jerome McCoy and his version of events that counters Reesa Teesa. And so we're going to get right into that and talk about it. And I want to know what you think. What's your thoughts on this viral sensation, Reesa Teesa, her videos that have become wildly popular in just a very short span of time, over 2 weeks, gaining millions of views and popularity? Like, it's outstanding how someone could be not known one day and all of a sudden internationally known in a very short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. First, thanks for having me. I've been loving talking about this stuff and kind of planning how we are going to come together and really talk about some important issues here. And this particular scenario is really interesting because at first, when you look at it, it's someone who's being very vulnerable and sharing some very personal things that people can relate to. And that's, I think, where it starts, where people started relating to her and saying, oh my gosh, and then they want to know more. And it becomes like the soap opera kind of thing after a while, especially since she did create at least 50 different videos, because TikTok only allows you to do, I think, 10 minutes at a time. So it was broken into chunks. She couldn't just do one long video. And she was either driving in her car or doing makeup. So it was a great way to utilize that time. So just thinking about it on that level, and you just want to share. And I've heard her say she just hopes that there's at least one person out there that hears her story and says, oh my gosh, I need to ask questions. There's some information I need. And I think that's one of the things you and I talked about is, when is it appropriate to ask questions? And what kind of questions should I be asking? And sometimes we don't ask those questions. And I shared with you about me and being raised the way I was. I didn't ask questions. I just did what I thought I was supposed to do or what I was trained to do. Or, so sometimes it's in our, how we're raised or something where you may not necessarily pay attention to some of the things that are occurring online. And we have this innate trust. Like, as human beings, we want to trust people. And, when you're meeting someone online, and of course, according to her story, they met on a Facebook dating app. But his story says they met at the Cheesecake Factory. So again, here we are with two different versions. Very difficult for me to discern which one's true. I'm not saying one's a lie, one's not. There's just no way for me to discern that without being there and seeing other people's opinions and talking to people and figuring that out and doing a full-on investigation with it. So it's really, that's how it started. It really started with her just opening up and showing her vulnerable side and trying to connect with somebody out there that could learn from her, because her story isn't fun and it doesn't show her in the best light. So it is really a vulnerable place to say, hey, I really screwed up and I want to share this so other people don't do this. She's considering him as someone that's not who he said he was. Like in my mind, I think of a catfish, really. So was it on Facebook dating app, and did he create a fake profile? So if it's his face and his name, it's not a fake profile. That's not a catfish. That's just someone that is not truthful. So where a catfish comes in is when it's a fake, everything's fake about it. The name is fake, a face is fake, the photos that they use someone else's photo usually. And then all of the information on their page is usually fake. And then they don't want to meet in real life and that kind of stuff. So we'll pause there for a second and see which direction we want to go from here.
I started watching just the highlights of Love is Blind last night for no good reason. Everyone's talking about a show, so I'll just go in and try to catch up on the cliff notes or watch some scenes. There was this one man that was on the show. So it was his time to ask questions. He had a list, dozens of questions. And so each girl he was speed dating with, right, he would tell them, choose a number, and he would ask the question. And so that I like somebody that's prepared with questions. But what was funny is that one of the females said, okay, well, now you answer that question. And he was startled and he's like, oh, I wasn't prepared to answer these. And I thought it was so funny.
I was just going to ask the questions. I wasn't really anticipating getting the same one back.
Oh my God.
Bro, did you not even consider that these same questions you would need to answer? And I loved the person that asked him the question, because I like to ask questions because that's how you find out information. It's so simple to just ask questions, but a lot of people don't ask enough questions. They want to assume something, or you fill in the blanks in your head of who you want someone to be. In the Reesa Teesa situation, one of the things that stands out right away is that, she wasn't in a good place financially. If you are going to date and you're maybe not in a good place mentally, financially, or whatever's going on, think how that might play out in your dating relationship. If you are financially can't afford to even drive to a date or pay for a meal or go on trips, are you being honest about that with the person you're going out with? Why are you going on a date? So it's important to have these conversations, and finances will come up. And some people date just to get things, get meals, get trips, they just want what they want, and they're not really interested in asking questions for other reasons. So I think if you do date, you do need to be honest with yourself about where you're at. If you are in a disadvantaged financial position and you are expecting the other person to do things for you, pay for a lot of things. In this situation, the first date was him coming to her rescue to, the way I understand it, pay for a new tire, right? She couldn't afford to get her tire fixed, or didn't have AAA, or didn't have the means, and called someone to help her. And so if you're the other person going into this date and you start paying for things right away, maybe you're okay with that, but those could be red flags. You start forking out money for someone that you actually don't even know yet. You're not even invested yet. You haven't even gone out to dinner yet. And you're already paying for someone that doesn't have money. That can be very comforting. Financial security.
I think of it too as, so it makes you wonder, was she looking for someone that could come in and help be her knight in shining armor and help her financially? Was he looking to impress somebody by saying, look, I can pay for your tire? So there's two sides to this. And I don't know, I'm not trying to imply that that's what they thought, but these are things that everybody really needs to think about when you're in this position and you're offering to pay for a tire with someone like they said, you haven't even gone to dinner yet. So that is a red flag. It should be a red flag on both sides, because why is someone willing to pay for a tire when you haven't ever met? Could be that the person is very generous and very kind and whatnot. So how it plays out from there is going to really matter. And having to go and rescue somebody is okay to go and rescue them and help them get somewhere, but it doesn't necessarily mean you need to take on a financial burden to help them. So it starts here. This is where this story starts. It's already got a dilemma on both sides.
Well, I feel like this is where the story ends also, because while I was getting ready and cleaning and cooking this morning, I listened to her ex's version, Jerome McCoy, and I just listening to his interview. It's filled with a theme of financial conflict. And one of the things that he was saying was it continued to be throughout the course of the relationship when it came time to purchasing a vehicle or a house, and she didn't have the credit that would make sense to purchase a vehicle with her name on it or a house. And it became a subject of controversy on and on. And one of the things that he said is that he was trying to teach her to be financially savvy. Again, that's his version. I'm not saying whether it's true or not, but he was saying still in the end, she hadn't cleaned up her finances, and he was trying to build a relationship with her, but it continued to be a problem. His advice for people was to make sure you're on the same financial playing field, because it can cause issues later, which obviously, yes, if you're trying to buy a house, and it's gonna cause a problem. And in their relationship, again, there's different reasons of why they broke up, but one of them is that he's citing is that there was financial motivation.
Yeah, I see that, and saying, okay, I don't want to put her on the house mortgage with me. So there's two sides of the story where she saw the offer, but it didn't have her name on it when they were trying to buy a really expensive house, leading us a little bit to believe that he was leaving her off of that house. But they're not married, so it's not out of the normal to not put someone on your house. But the fact that she had a lot of debt would make someone question, maybe I shouldn't put her, because his point was, in his version, that her credit would become his credit once they're married. So the marriage conversation came up really soon too. And so when you're going back to dating online or getting involved with people that you really don't know and you haven't done any background on them, you haven't asked any questions, and now you're not sure what's happening and why, those would be solved had they both sat down and started talking about what are their financial goals. They talked about what is the goal over this relationship, and they both said, I'm looking to get married. I want to have a family. I want to have a house. But they didn't talk about the financial sides of it, where they were coming together and how they were going to piece, to blend in their finances. So it seemed like there was a little bit of uncertainty, and I think she feels a little left out of that, but those questions being asked would be really important. And then now that they are airing these grievances online, it's going to bring a lot of people. So she gained a lot of followers very quickly. Like, we're talking a couple of weeks that this story was first aired. And she's got like 3.6 million followers at this point. Somebody saw them and notified him and said, hey, by the way, this is all being said about you. So he said at first he didn't really care, but what started happening, and this is where I come in with the cybersecurity side. Anytime you're interacting online and you're talking about other people, you could potentially run into someone that, especially when you have 3.6 million followers, you're going to have people that want to champion you, that are vigilante, and they're going to go after this person. So whoever exposed his name, and I don't know who it was, but somebody exposed his name, and somebody went over to someone's house who had the name of Jerome McCoy, but it wasn't the same Jerome McCoy. So they were doing something to the house, attacking him somehow. Family members were being called. All these things. This can turn into very dangerous situations. And unintentionally, I'm sure, I'm not saying anybody's doing anything intentionally, the outcome of this particular story, because she went online to try and help, with him learning about it and coming in with a different narrative, different perspective. So there's two sides to every story, and everybody needs to allow two sides to every story. Now we have people online with that anonymity that can go and act on your behalf with or without your permission. So this is something we see play out quite often on the security side of things, where the dangers that we put in play that we're not even aware of. So we have to be cognizant of who could be watching us. And while she did make efforts to clarify and make sure people understood what she meant to say or was trying to say, she had no way of knowing that these vigilantes were going to go and attack someone else and get the wrong guy. So, or call his family or his brothers or any of these people. She had no way of knowing that would happen. And that's the problem with this online diary that we're sharing with the world, is they all get to decide how they want to respond to your story. And we don't have any control over that. And so that is a big problem.
Thousands of loyal fans, and I just go into the comments section just to see on her side, and I went to his side and saw the comments, and they are disparaging him. They're highly emotional, and they're saying things like, you're schizophrenic, you're bipolar, you're psychotic, you're a narcissist, you're a psychopath. Those are very extreme accusations, and there's no information to support that in the video. He's not talking illogically, or
clinical diagnosis.
There's no evidence of any.
Yeah.
So I'm really cautious about making those types of assumptions. Just because you think something's true or you assume it's true based on the story you heard, you can't just start disparaging someone about that. There's so much misinformation on the internet, and I see it every day. People, this armchair psychologists diagnosing people very extreme disorders, which aren't accurate, and it's not helpful, and it's bullying. So, I'm sharing each side of the story here so that it's important as a consumer online that just recognize that this is information. We don't always know what's true or not. There's always another side to the story. Sometimes that's very difficult for people. Once they get one version of a story, they hear it first, then that's imprinted. And when new information comes, they just ignore it and they'll never accept it or believe it. And they get stuck there. And so this fan base, they're crazy for her and just love her, but careful, because people turn on a dime. And we know in cases online where the story flips. Someone's been dishonest in an extreme way, and the fans can turn against you, and it gets ugly. And as a psychologist, one of the things that I don't want to promote is online bullying, and with people getting so highly emotional, and there's just like a war online about it. You just want to really be careful about what can happen from here. So I say this, and I'm going to tell you, Dawn, I am professional online and would never engage in any bullying. And I consider LinkedIn a very professional site, which I was on the other day. And I ended up having to block and report 2 men who were out of line. And one was a mental health clinician selling a product who, I don't take insurance, so it's not a product I'm interested in. He direct messaged me and was threatening that if I didn't spend a half hour with him, that he was suicidal and homicidal. And he's been that way since age 9. I didn't engage with him because I'm not.
Wow.
But then another person on his post started making accusations against me for taking part in Britney Spears' conservatorship or a bunch of other stuff that I'm obviously not involved in. That's not what a forensic psychologist does. And so I had a very kind response. No, that's not what I do. And this person went on into a wild, paranoid rant, making harmful statements that I found threatening. And I reported both of them and blocked them. So my advice is, if it gets to that point, disengage. Don't partake in these situations because you don't actually know. These people were particularly unstable. One was in the military, an active military person who seemed very dangerous. And I just don't need that on me. So I disengage, right? I'm not going to. And so any online bullying, I would encourage people not to engage in or be a part of, because you don't know that person's mental state. If they're unstable, I would not engage in that. And so I just say that as people become, they want to stick to one side and want to support, say, Reesa Teesa or whatever it is, but they go out and commit, at the level of criminal acts, going to someone's house, bullying them, or if it's egging their house, harassing them, calling them, tormenting them. And I've seen this with people who they think are a registered sex offender, but it's same name, different person, not the same person, right? And they'll go egg their house, they'll go discriminate, disparage them, and it's the wrong person. But also, don't do that to anyone. Don't be involved. It actually makes you a criminal. So now you can be criminally charged. And I also think it's very important what you say about someone online making false statements, and it really affects people's lives. These are people. These are real people who have lives and just think about their families. And it's just crazy how wild it's blown up and how emotionally attached people are getting involved. A lot of people are saying they want to, give her Beyonce tickets, pay off her student loans, send her on trips to Paris, and buy her all these things. So and then on the other hand, her ex is saying, well, she's really smart. There's some financial motivation, but how could she have foreseen it would blow up this big?
Yeah, I don't think that she saw that this would be this huge and she would end up having this many followers. In fact, I was trying to look at the comments because that's something I do. I look for cyberbullying. I've been cyberbullied. I have people all the time making comments and tagging me. And there's certain ways that I deal with that. Instead of engaging with them, I just untag myself because what they say is not important enough for me to even have a response. So we have to decide how do you want to respond? How do you want to show up on the internet? So I talk a lot about cyberbullying. And what is cyberbullying? Well, it may not start off as cyberbullying. It might start off with the fact that you mentioned something that someone else disagreed with, and that person escalates. You're not escalating, they're escalating. And when they escalate, it becomes more of a troll. So there's different levels of cyberbullying. So now you all of a sudden have a troll who won't stop, and they keep going and going, and they add fuel to the fire, and they triangulate people into the whole conversation. And then before you know it, you're being bullied by this person. And then not only that, now you're being bullied by some of their friends or the people that they were able to bring into it. And then when does that stop? Sometimes that turns into stalking. When it turns into stalking, that's illegal. Like you were saying, you become a criminal at a certain point when you start taking different actions. And then if you act on something, even if you think that you're defending, Reesa Teesa, and you go over to somebody's house who happens to have the name of Jerome McCoy, and you do something to damage that house, you are a criminal. That's who you are. And that's where we have to start helping people realize what starts on the internet, and you take this action in defense of somebody or whatever the motive is. It's a criminal act. So now you have situations where Teesa's lost control, or I'm sorry, Reesa Teesa's lost control. I think her real name is Teresa. I heard him calling her Teresa a couple times. She's lost control of the whole following. She can't control any of them. When I'm looking at the comments, I'm realizing there's over 1 million comments on some of her videos. Individual, a 10-minute video has more than 1 million comments. And I would venture to say that all of those are not all positive comments. There's going to be people that are disagreeing with her, the fact that she's sharing her story. They'll disagree with the fact that she's claiming that she's been victimized by somebody that's a pathological liar. Whether you believe it or not, the thing is it's none of her business what you think. So we share so much. We're sharing a lot of our information, but then the followers share their emotions on top of that. So now they're adding emotion into their response. And that emotion might either inflame their own, but also maybe instigate others with their emotions. So it compounds. This is a snowball effect. And before you know it, you have somebody going over to someone's house and doing some real damage. And this is where the online world, it becomes unsafe for something that seemed to be a good intention. And now it's out of control. So there's a lot to think about here. And then with Jerome coming back and doing the interview, that is the more appropriate way, in my opinion, of doing it, rather than coming on TikTok and trying to argue or protect himself or defend himself in TikTok or on her post, because then she'd have 3.6 million people potentially coming after him that way. So he did it in a different way. I think it was on YouTube only. I haven't seen it. Then people are taking clips and putting it on TikTok, but he's removed himself from the fact that he didn't come in and dispute her posts, her actual videos. He may not have intended or thought that, but I'm seeing that that's how he responded. And when you watch his video, he tries to, or seems to, address some of these situations pretty clearly in his point of view and his perspective of the story. And then I still see other people taking the duets and doing a duet and saying, this guy's a psychopath. Like, where did that come from? How did we get from pathological liar to psychopath now? So it just keeps escalating and snowballing, and, it's just getting, more and more. There's the potential for greater harm is here. And for people getting involved that really don't need to be involved in someone's personal business, regardless if they put it on the internet or not. It doesn't mean that you can act on it. And I think that's where a lot of people feel empowered to, well, if you're dumb enough to put it out here, and I'm not calling anybody dumb, but that's what people think. If you're dumb enough to put it out there, then you're going to have to just deal with the fact that I'm going to make a comment. But that doesn't make it right. So you have this online presence that I think people need to realize that betrays who you are as a person. So you have your real self. And what I teach people is to consider, who is your doppelganger, your online doppelganger, because that online doppelganger represents you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Anytime that anybody is online and can see or view your videos or comments, your doppelganger is working 24/7. And that is a reflection of you. So do you want that reflection of you to be this hard-nosed, I don't take no BS kind of person? Do you really want that to be how people portray you? Or do you want to use the internet and be online to encourage people for benefits and education and other things that are more positive, rather than always being contrite or being the contrarian or just having to be right? We all really need to think of as adults, because who's watching? The children are watching. They're watching their parents. They're watching their peers. They're watching the friends of their parents. They're watching their friends. They're watching. And the more that they see that this is the type of behavior that people portray online and that they think it's appropriate, and it's not appropriate. Because now, how are they going to treat people going forward? They're going to treat people the same way they're seeing us treat people. We've already got enough bad guys out there. We got enough cyber criminals out there. We got catfish. We got online child predators. We've got scam artists and hackers and all these different types of cyber criminals out there. We don't need to add the vigilantes and people that want to champion somebody in defense of who wasn't asked to take action on innocent people. And it's not just the person you're responding to, it's everybody else in the thread. So when you make a response to somebody's thread that you happen to like or dislike, you're affecting everybody else. And if it's a negative response, then that's triangulation. So can you talk a little bit about that and how that might affect people?
You mentioned, who's watching, and children are watching. And so I'm actually involved in a civil lawsuit for cyberbullying between minors. One impersonated the other minor, and they thought they were anonymous. They're not, because the judge ordered records and the IP address was discovered, traced back to the home address where the minor lived. And it's a civil lawsuit.
Even if you use a VPN.
Yeah. So it's been going on for years, the lawsuit, but we're talking children, cyberbullying. There are consequences, and their parents will be held liable. They're caretakers. So if you are a parent, and I am, and I have a teenage son, so it is important to talk about. And in the case I'm working on, to see it affect the lives of children, and I'm quantifying that as far as civil damages, pretty horrific. And so they learn that behavior from somewhere, but it's not anonymous, and it's a crime. It gets to a certain level. It led to, like you said, triangulation is where you pull someone else in to side with you. And then other people threatening to commit crimes. And now you're involved in criminal activity. And that's what happened. And so people threatening to rape the other person, hurt them, kill them. So all because of cyberbullying. So when I see bullying online, and I recently made a comment on an Instagram post once, and some attorney who seemed to have lost his ever-loving mind started making outrageously despairing statements like that these people should die. And I'm out. Like, I take that very serious. And if someone is that emotionally invoked from a meme, or it was like an attorney meme joke thing, that reflects that person's mental state, and I would not engage with them because they're unstable, and you don't want that unstable person taking that emotional rage against you. So I would just caution anyone who is passionate about things, don't create a hostile environment. Everything I want to do online is education for the betterment of society, to help people. And anyone that was to be disparaging to anyone, I would not respond or encourage that behavior or participate. And I would say for people who feel enraged because somebody says something quite disparaging and it is emotional, right? Step away, recognize you're upset, and exit. Don't engage. If you're in that, you're feeling like a hothead, like you want to say something. First of all, you don't have to. No response is a response, and you need to log off and don't engage. It's not anonymous behavior. And I've seen some frightening comments online that I have reported. And actually, side story, I did another case, a criminal case. I saw the body cam footage, or actually what I got, people reported someone threatening homicidal threats on social media, and it was recorded and it was reported. I ended up getting the footage to review, and it was correct that they reported it. Thank you. It was very real, and the person went to jail. So I would say if you see something, report it. I report stuff almost every day. Sadly, that's the world we live in, but you do not have to respond or engage. Report it. It's not your job to, after that, whatever happens with the report, a lot of times social media will say this is not a valid report or there's nothing they can do. Just you did your part. Now, if it gets to the point, like in the one criminal case I'm talking about, someone called law enforcement and he went and got arrested. And that was the correct move. But that person also had recorded, I'm not going to say which platform it was, but they had captured the data. I was able to see the threats, and it equaled quite a number of felony charges. And in the end, that person lost their job. If you're incarcerated for months, 6 months, a year, however you're going, you end up losing your job. It's a huge expense. So you don't engage. Don't make threats on social media and think that you can delete it and think that it's gone forever, right?
Right. If it's there forever. Once you put something out there, and this is so true because I do this myself, but when I work with people that are being bullied or just even feeling like someone's just trolling them, because I want to start before it gets to really severe bullying. So if you're being trolled by somebody, which is somebody that's like not aligning, not agreeing with what you're saying, and they're making some comments and it's not really severe, but it's still uncomfortable, document it. I document everything. Take screenshots of it, write down dates and times, make sure that you have information to provide in the report. So when you do call law enforcement and you need help, you have something to share with them and saying, this is the time, this is who it was, this is what their Facebook or Twitter or any handle, whichever platform they're on, that's their handle, so that they can literally go and investigate it and see what they can determine as well. But if you have the screenshot, even if they were to remove it, you still have the screenshot. So it does help. And it's really important, especially for parents with children who are being bullied by their classmates and their peers. You need to teach your kids how to document anything that's happening. So something is said, it needs to be a screenshot. And then that needs to be tagged. It needs to have information with that particular image, so that, if something happens a couple months down the road, you're not trying to remember, well, why did I take that screenshot? Who was it, or what did it have to do with? Because sometimes your profile name may not actually be a person's real name. So you need to write information down with every image. And sometimes you can add metadata to an image. So it depends on the software that you have. But even if you have a notebook log with the name of the image that you're putting into an evidence folder on one of your computer or OneDrive, but collect this information so that you can go back and provide the information in a report for law enforcement to take action. Because part of the problem is when we have crimes online, there's not a lot of action that a police officer or any investigator can take if we can't give them the details. So if we don't know who the person is and we just tell them, oh, it was Texas 101, we don't know who Texas 101 is. So then it's going to take a court order to find that out. Well, they need to have probable cause to get a court order. So now you're running into not being able to have anything done because they just don't have enough information to go on. So always document, take screenshots. I save almost everything that I see, especially if it has to do with me or if I see it on one of my friends, or even especially with children. I'll capture a whole thread just in case. And then I'm either friends with their parents, or I might try and figure out who are their parents and try and provide that information. And sometimes it's useful and sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. So I'm just trying to do the best I can, but I can't reach everybody and get this information into the hands. But if we are all paying attention to who is responding to our friends or especially our children, especially children. And if you see something that is happening on a child's profile, we need to be capturing that information and trying to help put that into the correct hands, even if you have to, I want to say contact the child, but it might be difficult to reach out to them out of the blue and try to provide them something. They might think that's creepy. So we have to be careful about how we approach people as well, because we don't want that to also be looked at in a bad light. And why are we looking at their profiles? So it can get pretty complicated sometimes when you're trying to do the right thing. Sometimes people are not trusting some stranger to come in and try and help them. Be mindful of what you do and how you're portraying yourself on the internet. And does that reflect who you are in person? So would you say that to somebody's face? And if so, would you say it to your grandmother's face? Because we might say more to somebody you don't know and feel empowered to say something and get involved, insert yourself into a situation and get involved into like this situation between Reesa and Jerome. There's a lot of people involved now, way too many people involved. And I don't know how it's going to play out. And I don't know if it's going to backfire on anybody. The potential for backfire is real in both situations. So while it blew up and went fast and it went far and it got a lot of attention, that could also turn around and be devastating. We don't want to add to that. No, I don't want anybody to participate in that backlash. If things fall apart, it needs to be manageable by the people involved. And when we're all contributing to it and making it worse, compiling and snowballing, now they can't manage it themselves. And now it's a bigger issue that they are struggling just to try and get through. The internet doesn't have a lot of forgiveness, but we as people need to allow that. We need to allow for room for people to adjust and move on from something they may or may not have done.
I was going to segue a case I was thinking of where it backfired. There was a case of a missing woman in our town, local Shasta County, a young, beautiful female who was missing. She had children. She had a husband. She was allegedly abducted. Her name was Sherry Papini. And, it was a manhunt for her abductors, and it went on, and everyone was, please send her home. She had a huge fan base from a huge church. They had a special day for her, sent a balloon bouquet, and it went. What happened in the end was she admitted to making it up. It took a sharp turn. She got charged later. I believe she's serving time. It went from love and adoration to extreme hate and bullying. And obviously that person's not in a good mental state. If you are faking your own kidnapping, that's not a good mental state. The tragedy is not just that, it's that the aftermath for the remainder of her life, while it can seem in the short term to gain notoriety and fame, right? Or whatever it is that you're seeking, because people do make up stuff on the internet. The internet can be cruel and it can haunt you for the rest of your life. And in her case, sadly, there is no undoing it. It remains forever, not just a charge, a felony charge on her record or serving time, but psychologically being in a much more state of despair than ever and taking much longer to repair yourself. So people underestimating the long-term consequence and just wanting that short-term gratification. And this goes for, I've done therapy with clients who got involved with someone, those player types who pretend they have cancer and they're really a drug addict. I want to ask you, Dawn, what can people do to avoid being in this situation? Let's just say I'm Reesa Teesa and I'm going to date this guy, Legion, or vice versa, like male or female, right? It doesn't matter. Both sides of the dating pool, like what should they do as far as running someone's background or finding out who the other person is? The key is do it before you're in a relationship with them, not when you're knee deep living with them, right? When do they do it, Dawn?
Lord help anybody that tries to come into one of our lives, because there's a lot that I would do. I don't know what you would do.
Oh, I'll tell you you know what I would do, Dawn.
You're going to have a background check. I'm going to check your handwriting. There's all kinds of things. I'm going to want to talk to people that you know or people that they've worked with, and, maybe even to the extent of exes. I want to know how you treated them, because it's not something I'm interested in getting entangled with something that could potentially turn out dangerous when there's so much to hide. So a background check at the very least is very important. Talking and asking questions, which is something you mentioned earlier. You ask questions so that you can find out information. So it's important to ask those questions early on before you even think about meeting someone in real life. So, and that's a phenomenon on the internet where you talk to people online, you get emotionally involved with them, and you want to talk to them every day. You share so much information about each other, or maybe even one-sided. It just feels like you're sharing something, together or equally. You have to stop and think, what are they sharing information back with me, or am I the only one talking? 2, have you been on a Zoom call or Instagram or FaceTime or anything that you can get face-to-face with this person, even if it's through a monitor? You need to see them. You need to be able to put the face to the name and understand that they are actually a real person. If they're not willing to get on FaceTime or Zoom or any of these platforms and have a face-to-face with you, that is the biggest red flag there is when it comes to these online predators and catfish. They do not want to show you their face because they're using a fake profile. And you won't know that if you don't ask them to get on a FaceTime or Zoom. If you don't ask them, they're getting away with this fake profile because you're not calling them out on it. So one of the very first things you should do, get face-to-face with them before you ever meet in real life. You don't know who they are. So start with social media when you are first talking to somebody. So you learn a little bit about them. You find them on Facebook. You find them on Twitter. You find them on Instagram, whatever platform you're finding them on. Do a Google search on them. Find out if there's information that just happens to come up. You got to kind of dig into them a little bit first. See what kind of posts they're posting on Facebook. What kind of friends do they have? Are those friends someone that they have in common? Do you have something in common with what they're posting on Facebook? Can you relate to this person? Is it a brand new post? If it's a brand new account, then I would question, is this a catfish? Because most of the time, most people have had a Facebook account. Very few people these days, and the younger you are, the more true this is, very few people have not had a Facebook account. So you could usually look at it, and they're going to at least be a couple months old, and they're going to have it full of posts. They're going to have friends. You can look at their friends and determine, are these family? Is this people that they work with? Dig around, snoop. It's a public profile. And if it's public, use it. Use it to your advantage to find as much information about this person that you can so that you're better prepared to ask questions. And the information that you're getting off of these platforms that you're not being told when you talk to someone on the phone, the information that you're getting should lead to questions. And then when you start asking those questions and they're starting to avoid answering. So one thing I want to mention about Jerome, when he is sharing his side of the story, I noticed that he circled around the question a lot. So how someone answers a direct question is very important. Did they answer your question, or did they deflect it? Or did they say anything but? And he did that quite often. There was a couple of times where he was talking about somebody else and not even himself. It became about somebody else. It really went way away from that direct question. So that makes me wonder, he didn't want to touch that. So that gives me doubt in that particular area. So he's hiding something. So pay attention to how people are answering you. Look at them when you're on a face-to-face. Also, watch them as they answer you. Are they looking at you? And don't fall for the trick that just because they're looking around, that means they're lying, because that is not true. And studying body language and stuff, especially when you're on a camera, most people are not going to look you in the eye like I am right now the whole time, because that's not a person that I'm looking at. I'm looking at a camera. So I might be looking off or watching the dog as I'm answering a question, and that's completely, totally normal. So you can't judge people online by the way they're looking around. So don't fall for that. That can be a myth when it comes to being online. But they should at least be focused and at least somewhat looking towards you. Now, if I'm looking at Dana right now, I'm looking at her talk, which if she was talking, I'd be looking at her talk. I'm not looking at the camera because I'm watching her. I want to see her talk. But when I talk, I want to start looking at the camera. So that could be something you could look for when you're meeting with somebody face to face on with the monitor. I would take it even the next step as your relationship grows. And again, probably before you meet in person, you might want to start asking bigger questions, and you might consider doing a background check. At least check for criminal history. You're not going to get their date of birth or social security number early on. And if you do, I would think that's a red flag too. Don't be afraid to ask these questions and ask some important questions. So Dana and I were talking about this a couple days ago. What kind of questions do you ask? Well, if I'm going to date somebody with things that I didn't ask, so I'll tell them myself here. I didn't ask, what religion are you? I didn't ask, do you even believe in God? I didn't ask, what kind of parenting do you want to apply if we have kids? I didn't ask these questions. I didn't ask, what kind of finances position are you in? I didn't know that he had his driver's license revoked. I didn't ask, and evidently turned into a divorce. But because I didn't ask, I wasn't prepared, and I wasn't able to fix the problem that I thought I was going in to fix. And that's another thing. We can't go in to fix. So if it seems broken already, maybe wait it out for a little while. See if they can do some fixing, fix themselves first. Empower them to fix themselves before you get involved. So I know that was kind of a lot, Dana, but we have to start with asking questions, and use social media, be a little snoopy. Anything that's public out there is available for us to use to discern who people are. And if it's a brand new post or a brand new account, and another trick, and I do this a lot, is do a reverse image lookup. Make sure that the image that they have on their profile isn't attached to some surgeon in Brazil or a military general or any of those, because those are all going to be catfish. I can almost tell as I get friend requests, I can see them using the same photos over and over again. And they just give me a different name.
How does one do that?
You have to save it locally. So you need to save the image to your computer. And then when you go to Google, you can upload it. You can type in photos.google.com. Or if you hit Google's homepage, there's the bar and it has a little camera on the side next to this magnifying glass. If you hit the little camera, it'll open up the image, and you can drag and drop, or you can upload it in there. And then what it's going to do is going to ask you, what part of this image do you want me to search? So you can put it on just the face, or if it's the whole photo you want to search for, because sometimes it's just a headshot. So it'll go and it'll look for other images that looks like that and tell you where it's been used before. So if it's the same person, then you should see it on Instagram, on all their other platforms. It should be the same person with the same name. If it's a fake person, it's going to show you magazine articles or a surgeon or all these different areas where it's not even the same name. So that's one of the first telltale signs that this is a catfish.
All of this is why I have trust issues. I will say I've been on dating apps before.
You're not alone.
I know. And you should have a healthy distrust, because I get scams every day, maybe like 100 a day between emails, DMs, and so on. And I just block, delete. It's just like taking out the trash. You just do it.
Me too.
And no one should be DMing me, because we're not having a private conversation. Anything you need to say is public, and I don't encourage that. Yeah. I did run a background on a guy, my most recently dated, and he had some major civil lawsuits. Just talking, I got that information, and then you could right away be coming to a conclusion that person has some serious unresolved issues or things they failure to learn from past mistakes. And you can still go on a date with someone, but then you're empowered, you know that. And if it comes up and they lie or they have still not matured or learned that lesson or something, then you now have a lot of information and you can just, that can be that. You can be done with that. But I recommend, and I learned the hard way, but don't assume people don't have a criminal record. I used to put on my dating profile that I would run your criminal background. And here's the response I got. Absolutely angry men responding saying, why would you waste your money on that? Like, I'm off probation now. Like, they would start confessing all this stuff. And I never did anything. I just said like I could or would. Their reaction said all you need to know. I mean, if someone acts like rageful because you say you're going to run their background, you just got your answer. So anyone should feel really comfortable. I feel comfortable if you want to run mine. There's nothing to hide. And dating these days, they should bring you a clean bill of health too. Like they're cleared, they don't have an STD, like all those things. Don't be afraid to ask these questions. Don't assume anything. Ask the questions.
It's not personal. It's not personal. If they're taking it personal, that to me is a red flag. If they have nothing to hide, then they shouldn't mind that you even suggest it, or including having those tests before you get involved intimately like that. That's definitely an important thing. You're protecting your body. So if anybody was to gawk at that, I'd say, okay, that told me what I needed to know. Bye-bye. Yeah, we're going to move on to the next. But one other thing I wanted to mention about, as we're looking at different people, we get a lot of these. I get friend requests a lot. I get emails a lot, just like you. I get weird, all of a sudden out of the blue, pop-up messages and with flowers and prayer hands and love yous and hearts. And that to me is just like, I'm never going to respond to that. It's never going to happen. So one of the things that I think also helps is when I get a friend request, I need to know, is this somebody that, because my Facebook profile, for example, as well as LinkedIn, is built on a professional profile. It's not my personal profile. I don't share information about my family, or, I barely ever share anything about my kids. I might make, some photos, but you really can't tell where they're at or who they are in the photos. It couldn't pick them out of a lineup. So I'm very careful about what I share, but I share enough that people can get to know me and know, like, and trust me, right? So when I get a friend request, there may be a legitimate business connection. And I don't want to ignore every single request. So I'm going to take the time to, one, I'm going to look at their photo first. That's the first thing that's going to happen. Two, I'm going to look at their profile. I'm going to see how old it is. And then I'm going to look at to see what kind of photos that they have, because most people have a lot of photos of themselves. So I can see some family photos. I can see some business photos. I'm at a gala. I did this. I'm rock climbing. I'm going to see photos of a real person. Then I'm going to look at their friends. And if they're showing who their friends are, okay, we should never show who our friends are. So we should all be hiding our friends list. But a lot of times I can see their friends, and their friends are not concealing their friends lists. And I'm friends with them. So it's showing that who we have in common. So because my friends are showing their friends list to these strangers, I can see who they are. And now these strangers can send me a friend request because I'm on a list of somebody that they friended. So now all of a sudden I can see, and I see this, there's about 5 different people that constantly accept anybody's friend request. And then almost instantly they're sending out friend requests to their friends. And I can tell every time if it's that group of 5 people that I'm never going to accept that friend request, because they're not paying attention. They're not doing any due diligence. They're just wanting the friend count. And the friend count is not important. The quality of friends is very important, much more important. How many you have doesn't mean you're popular. you could have 20 friends and be the life of the party. So the number of friends has nothing to do with the popularity. I don't know, probably 90% of the people that are friends with me on Facebook, but I'm not on Facebook to be friends. I'm on Facebook because I'm offering a service. They may be offering a service. And together we're trying to do good out there in the world. And there's people that I would love to help. So some people may need my service. So I do want to look at these people and the requests that I get, because I don't want to not accept a request from somebody that could use my help. So look at every single friend request you get and determine if these requests are they're real people. Are they real people? And I kind of gave you some ideas on how to determine that. They're going to have more than one post. Now, keep in mind, if they have a private page, you're not going to see a lot of personal things on there because they've locked it down. So if they've locked it down, you may not see a lot, but you should still be able to see when they open that account and then friends in common and that kind of stuff. So just kind of have to look at each one and find out, what do I have in common with this person? And if I don't have anything in common with the person, then I don't accept the friend request.
Do all this before you go on a date. And the reality is, most of the time, you'll never go on a date because that person, it's a flop. You're not going to proceed. You don't need to get to know them. Do all that first. You don't need to go out with them. The problem is that once you're engaged emotionally or physically or, intimately in a relationship, you're in a relationship. And now you're in one. Now you're trying to get out. And that is where obviously I deal with dangerous, violent predators. And so my goal is to help people not be involved with them emotionally, not meet up with them, not engage with them, because getting untangled from them is lethal. And so you always want to protect yourself at all costs. So consider yourself a very high valuable person, and anybody you engage with or going to go out with, that they've got to be a certain level to have one-on-one time with you or go meet up with them. They have to be a qualified person. Just like it's a job interview, they have to qualify. There's certain levels of qualification. So I'd say everyone needs to figure out your screening process so you can avoid being in situations like this. I really appreciate you, Dawn. And I'm going to leave some information. If you sign up for Killer Psychologist podcast, you sign up in my Stan store to get notified of episodes. I send the full episode details with the links of our guests, like Dawn, information on how to get a hold of her if you want her to be a speaker at your school or event, or you want to retain her services or follow her on social media. It's great to sign up for the podcast and then get the links. That way you can follow more about what she does. If you're interested in that career field, what it takes. And, the cyber world it's hard to keep up with right now with all the deep fake AI images and on and on. So I follow Dawn because I'm going to lean on her if I need her services, or I know that she's going to be able to help me if I'm going to follow her content for information. And also, if I need a background check or anything, I'm going to stick Dawn on them. Any name, I'm going to drop it to her and she's going to do that. So all I'm saying out there, whoever you are, male or female, it doesn't matter. You need to protect yourself. Have a go-to person that can screen your dates, check them out. And if you don't have someone, hire someone. And it's well worth the investment. Trust me. So thank you so much, Dawn, for your time today and all the information that you provided. And obviously, we'll upload this video on YouTube and you can interact with Dawn and ask more questions. And so thanks for listening to Killer Psychologist. And thank you, Dawn McCarty.
Thank you. It was fun being here.
Thanks for listening. Killer Psychologist video episodes are now on YouTube, and you can post your responses there. For episode details and merch, check out killerpsychologistpodcast.com. And for forensic services, you can book online at psychologydr.com. That's psychologydoctor.com.